Welcome on in, everybody. It's the Old Aussie Rules Football Podcast. This is episode 62. It's Grand Final week, and this is our Grand Final 2024 preview podcast episode. Massive amount to get through. Obviously, just the one game this weekend, but it is the biggest game of the year. It's going to be Sydney Swans taking on Brisbane Lions at the MCG Saturday afternoon at 2:30pm Australian Eastern Time. We're going to run through that game as we always do. We'll start off the episode looking at both prelim games, how they were won, who was good players, whatnot in that one. Then we'll jump into our preview for the grand final, and we'll just run through my tips at the end of the episode, and then we'll finish off with that's where we'll finish with the tips. Without any further ado, let's jump into it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know down in the comments below who you think is going to win the grand final this year. Big game, big game. Both the last two losers going against each other, so that will be interesting to see how it plays out. So we'll start off with looking at prelim final weekend. Started on Friday night with Sydney Swans hosting Port Adelaide, and then it started pretty favourably for Sydney. In all honesty, they got off to a good start, kicked 4 goals in that first quarter, and then it just by halfway through the second quarter they'd extended it out to a comfortable 4-goal lead, and they kind of just kept it around about that mark for the rest of the game. Ended up winning by 6 goals. Interesting to note that Port Adelaide let themselves down in the last quarter. They kicked 2 goals, 3 in the first, second and third quarter. Only managed 2-2, so they missed out by a point from doing 15, 15, 15 and 15 throughout the match. But a bit of the disappointing result, in all honesty, for Port Adelaide here. Look at the numbers. Accuracy for Port Adelaide was a killer. They had one less shot than Sydney for the match. In all honesty, they weren't as good as Sydney, but it certainly hurt them, the fact that they kicked poorly, because their forward efficiency was good. When they went forward, they managed to get goals, or get shots, sorry, not goals. But yeah, they just couldn't convert their chances. Inside 50 differential, massive favour of Sydney, which, I mean, they do pretty well in the inside 50 count, but Port Adelaide typically are a better team in that regard, so a little bit surprising there. The disposal efficiency of Sydney was out of this world, really, for finals football. To go 76.7% is really, really high. Main reason for that is probably the plus 64 uncontested possessions. They dominated the mark count as well. They just controlled the openness of the game. They ran, they carried, they had control of the match early on, all the way through. Clearances went the way of Port Adelaide, but Sydney aren't a massive clearance team. They just get the job done elsewhere. Contested footy, both teams struggle at this area in terms of raw numbers against each other, but Sydney took the cake in this one. Tackle differential went the way of Sydney again, and the intercept game was absolutely dominated by Sydney, which is not an area that they dominate too often, but they really did a good job of it here and turned it into some scores, especially early. Their first couple real good attempts at goal were from intercepts. 2 of their first 3 goals, I think, were from intercepts. So a really good performance from Sydney, in all honesty. I look at some of the best players. In my opinion, no doubt about who was best on ground. He was best on ground in their qualifying final. He did it again. Isaac Heaney. He's in some amazing form this year. He's been dominant all year. Yeah, he gets a lot of help in that midfield from some other stars, but I think he is the biggest star of the lot. 24 touches, 2 goals, 6 clearances, 6 tackles. There's not a lot that Isaac Heaney can't do and doesn't do. Goulden had plenty of it, 27 touches in this one. To go with 4 clearances, played a little bit more in the middle over the last few weeks instead of just always on the wing, which is an interesting option at this point of the year, but it seems to be working fine. Rowbottom continued tackling like a machine, as he always does. Had 11 tackles to go with his 18 touches. Chad Warner, 21 touches, 2 goals. He finishes games incredibly well, week in, week out. I'm not sure if there's anyone else worth noting. Oh, maybe Joel Lamarty. He was I give him props for this one. I, like many people, have been a little bit concerned with his output throughout most of the season. Obviously, he did kick 9 goals in that one game, round 16 or so, wherever it was. But he was really good this game. He provided a target. He kicked 3 goals in the end, 16 touches, 5 marks. Certainly played his role and kicked 3 goals too. Could have kicked a bag, but still the 3 goals were very crucial. Papley also kicked 3, so he was good. And Logan McDonald, as the other tall up forward, also kicked 2 goals. So they got good output from their tall forwards, whereas Port Adelaide really did not in this game. Certainly in the first half. They kicked a couple in the second half, but the game was pretty much over by that point. For Port Adelaide, best players, Travis Boak had the most of it for them, just about. He had 22 touches, 1 goal. He did turn it over a bit, cost him a couple goals, but he tried his heart out the whole way. Burgoyne, he's had a really good final series. He was good against Hawthorn. He was one of, if not their best player against Hawthorn, and he was really good again in this one. 19 touches and a goal. Ryan Burton, similar sort of game to Travis Boak, in all honesty. Had some good moments, had some bad ones. Connor Rose, only 17 touches and 2 goals, so he did get forward for 2 goals, which was really important, but just couldn't find the ball enough, in all honesty. 17 touches was probably not enough for him in this game. Ollie Wines kicked 0-3, could have been really good. Kicks all 3 of them, and maybe Port Adelaide are in this one. Horn Francis wasn't as damaging as normal. Did have 23 touches, 7 clearances, but just couldn't turn it into scores, really. And Zach Butters only the 20 touches. He was a little bit quiet as well. So their midfield just kind of struggled. Their tall forwards struggled. It was just a game that they just weren't really at the same level as Sydney, if we're being honest. And Port Adelaide paid the price. They lose. That's the end of their season. Went one step further than last year, but at the end of the day, that doesn't really help them, because they finished second on the ladder in the home and away season, and they don't make the grand final. So it's, in my opinion, a bit of a disappointment for them to finish their season. Go check out the video I posted earlier this week, which is their 2024 season review video for the Port Adelaide Football Club. Run into all the stats, all the numbers of their season, a deeper dive into them. So go check that one out. We'll jump now into game number 2 of the weekend. This one was Geelong-Brisbane. It was at the MCG at 5:15. A bit of a weird starting time, but it worked out okay. Geelong-Brisbane. It was billed as a big game. Geelong probably comfortably enough favourites going into this game. And at different points, both teams looked like they had their chances. Geelong wasted opportunities early in that first quarter. Then Brisbane dominated a patch. Went into quarter time 9 points clear. The second quarter was Geelong dominant. 7 goals, 2 they kicked in that second quarter. I mean, Brisbane still managed 5 goals. No, they didn't. They managed 2 goals, 4, sorry. So, I mean, that one quarter alone was Geelong's big shining light, really. They then kicked the first goal of the third quarter, which went to Paddy Dangerfield. And at that point, I was like, it's going to take some beating here for the Cats. They went up 61-36 early in the third. But from that point on, they really struggled. Brisbane kicked the next 3. Geelong got 1 back, and then the next 3 went Brisbane again. Oh, next 4 actually, and then Geelong got 1, and then it was goal for goal late. Ollie Henry kicked a goal with about 3 minutes to go to put Geelong in front. Or less than 3 minutes to go in actual fact, but Brisbane just came again. Archie kicked 1, a really good one, and then Cam Rayner, who was quiet in the first half, really turned it on in the second half. He kicked the match winner from just outside 50. Well, they were already leading, but that put them further in front and pretty much sealed the game with about a minute to go. Yeah, that's the tale of the tape. A look at some of the stats in this one. Geelong Inaccuracy certainly hurt them here. I think on numbers, on projected score, on expected score, Geelong probably win this one. But just wasted opportunities, certainly in that first half. Brisbane, who typically have been a pretty poor team in front of goal, kicked really, really well at goal this game. Exactly 50%, which for them is a really big positive. Forward efficiency-wise was really good for Brisbane as well. I mean, Geelong were at average forward efficiency, but Brisbane were above. Inside 50s were dominated by Geelong here, which is a little surprising because that is Brisbane's best part of their game. They average 9 inside 50s more than their opponents every game. So to go -7 here is a massive positive that they managed to turn that into a win. Next up, clearances dominated by Brisbane. No surprise there. They are the much better clearance team out of these two. Contested footy went the way of Geelong, but just like the previous prelim, the team that dominated uncontested football won the game in the end. Brisbane plus 60 is a massive margin in uncontested football and kind of tells you how this game was played, mainly in Brisbane's control for long periods. Tackles were dead level. I mean, that's a pretty big positive for Brisbane as well, who are typically a team that gets smacked in the tackle game. Intercept game, no surprise that Geelong wins it. Brisbane are typically pretty good at that area of the game, but Geelong are the best in the competition in the intercept game, and they showed that here. They went +4 intercepts to Brisbane's, so really good performance in that regard from Geelong, but they just couldn't quite get over the line in the end. We'll have a look at some of the best players in this one. We'll start off with Brisbane. They were the winners, so we'll look at them. Zorko, 32 touches. He was really important. He got a lot of uncontested footy, did well with it. 766 metres gained. Lachie Neale, last year's Brownlow medalist, 31 touches. 12 clearances was huge in the clearance game. Dunkley was really good with 28 touches and a clearance. McCluggage, 27 touches, a goal, 6 clearances. Ainsworth had 20 touches and was crucial with 8 tackles as well. Cam Rayner, as I said, was pretty quiet in the first half, but really turned it on in the second half. Had 18 touches and 2 goals in the end. Anyone else worth noting? Archie kicked 3 goals, was good. Logan Morris kicked 2 goals, which is really big for him, the young, tall forward. Charlie Cameron and Zach Bailey both kicked 2 goals each. Jump into Geelong. Ollie Henry kicked 4 goals, was huge. Kicked the goal to go in front with 3 minutes to go, but in the end, it wasn't quite enough for them, but 4 goals and a goal assist from him was a really good output, in all honesty. Brian Myers, he was outstanding. 20 touches, 2 goals, a goal assist. One of the best goal assists you'll ever see in AFL football. So if you haven't seen that, go check it out. It was a really good one. 5 tackles was really good. Reece Stanley did his role in the ruck, although probably should have done better, seeing Oscar McInerney got subbed out at just after halftime. And missed a fair chunk of the first half with a dislocated shoulder and then a second dislocated shoulder. So Reece Stanley probably should have made better use of that, in all honesty. Zach Guthrie was okay with 18 touches. Tom Stewart was solid, 22 touches. Jeremy Cameron started really well, 17 touches, 2 goals, but ended up with 3 behinds. Could have had a day out. Just let himself down with that finishing this week. And that's Geelong's game, really. That's their stats, that's their best players. That's everything from prelim final weekend. For more on Geelong, don't forget I posted a season review video just a couple days ago for Geelong. It's on the YouTube channel, so go check that out, and let me know what you think in the comments of that video. We'll jump across now into Grand Final week. Everything Grand Final week. Before we do that, don't forget to check out all the socials. We've got everything basically, and it's at All Aussie Rules on all of them. Also, don't forget, if you're listening or watching this on Spotify or YouTube, we have the other one as well. The podcast goes live twice a week, Mondays and Fridays, on the YouTube and Spotify channels. So don't forget to give that a like and a follow. I appreciate all the support. Let's jump now into Grand Final week. We'll start with the teams as they've been announced an hour ago for this game. We'll have a look at Sydney first. No changes, which is no surprise. They announced yesterday that Callum Mills would not be coming into this team, so the captain misses out, which is a big loss for them, and also very, very disappointing for him. Obviously, no change means also no Taylor Adams, who hasn't played the last couple games, so disappointing for him. 2 years in a row going to be missing out on a grand final after missing out on Collingwood's last year. But no change is a really big positive for Sydney, in all honesty. Callum Mills coming in would have been huge, but at the end of the day, it's a good result that they don't have to make a change. Meanwhile, for Brisbane, they have to make one change, which they'd be very disappointed about. Oscar McInerney going out. As I mentioned just a minute ago, he did dislocate his shoulder twice, so he misses out on this one. He goes out. Darcy Fort comes in. Massive opportunity for him. It's going to be a tough one for him, no doubt about it, but a big opportunity for a player that's pretty much done full-time rucking all year, but just in the VFL team instead of the AFL team. So that's the two teams as they've been named. I have run through all the players that played for Sydney in their grand final 2 years ago and Brisbane in their grand final loss last year. We'll just run through all of the players that played in those games. Firstly, Sydney had 16 of their current team play 2 years ago in the loss to Geelong. Meanwhile, Brisbane had 17 out of their 23 play last year in the grand final loss to Collingwood. So for Sydney, starting in the back line, Rampy played. I'll also read out their player ranking according to my stats. Are they perfect stats? Is it perfect rankings? Probably not, but it's a good indication of how well they played. Rampy, he played. He was 24th best. Tom McCartan was 25th best on field. Blakey was 40th, so he really struggled to have much impact on the game last time. I think he had like 13 or 14, maybe 15 touches, whatever it was, but he didn't have much impact on the game. He was ranked 40th on the ground. Jake Lloyd played. He was 37th. Cunningham, Melican, neither of those played 2 years ago. Neither did James Jordan. He was still at Melbourne. The next one, Chad Warner. He was ranked 2 on the ground in the end, behind Dangerfield. But in all honesty, a lot of his damage was done in that last quarter, which the game was well and truly over. But nonetheless, was the second best player on the ground in the end. He does finish games really well, so he could be dangerous late on the weekend this week. Who's next? Florent played. He was ranked 42, so really low down. Luke Parker played. He was ranked 7th. Logan McDonald did not play. Errol Goulden did. He was a lot younger, or 2 years younger, but just fresh into the team, really. He was ranked 28th. Papley was ranked 17th, did okay. Joel Amartey didn't play. Will Hayward, he was ranked 38. Brodie Grundy obviously was at Collingwood 2 years ago and Melbourne last year, so he wasn't at Sydney. Isaac Heaney did play. He was ranked 14th. I thought he was really quiet that day. He did pop up for a couple good, important moments, but overall ranked 14th. Expects better from him this weekend. Rowbottom was 5th on the field. Matt Roberts didn't play. Braden Campbell was 41st. Justin McInerney was 43rd, so really struggled to have an impact. Hayden McLean was 20th. And Robbie Fox actually played quite a good game 2 years ago, when he was ranked 15th on the ground. Jump over to Brisbane and their players that played last year now. We start with Zorko. He played. He was ranked 29th on the ground. Wasn't hugely effective. Has changed roles this year, though. More of a running backman to replace Coleman, who was outstanding last year in the grand final. Harris Andrews, 8th best last year. He played a really good game. Connor McKenna was 39th. Wilmot was 35th best. Jack Payne didn't play. Lester was 26th. Fletcher was 42nd. Will Ashcroft didn't play. He was injured last year, so that's a big in for them there. McCluggage was actually the number one ranked player. He had a lot of it, kicked goals, had a couple goal assists as well. He was really important for Brisbane, and in my opinion, if Brisbane had won that game, he would have got the Norm Smith medal. Rayner was really quiet last year, ranked 40th. Joe Danaher was ranked 4th, played really well, important goals, did some backup ruck work, which he'll be required to do again this year. Was really important in their game last year. Berry, 24th. Charlie Cameron was 34th. Hipwood was 36. Zach Bailey played a really good game, 16. Darcy Fort didn't play, obviously. Oscar McInerney was number one ruck last year. I mean, he was this year as well for the whole season until this weekend. Dunkley, he played. He was ranked 17. Lockie Neal was ranked 18th. So you can probably expect a little bit more out of him this year than he gave last year. He was really good last year, but he just didn't quite have the final output that we kind of expect from him. Kai Lohman didn't play. Archie was ranked 31. Logan Morris obviously didn't play as he debuted this year. Starkovich, he was ranked 27th. Struggled in the first half, got caught out on Bobby Hill a couple times, but his second half was really good. And Noah Answorth did not play. So that's everyone that's played in the last two grand finals. And how they went, as you can see, McCluggage was best on last year, in my opinion, on the ranking system. Warner was second best the year before. So they were the two standouts going into this one. We now jump into some of the stats. If you haven't seen it already, I do a bit of a deeper dive in a video that I released yesterday on the YouTube channel, just a grand final preview, so go check that out. It goes into these stats a lot more than I will in this podcast episode, just for time reasons and just to make it more concise. Just did a quick video on some of the stats, so go check that out. But we got Sydney, Brisbane. Obviously, Sydney finished first on the ladder. Brisbane fifth. Sorry. They meet in the grand final. Last two losers. Both in really good form. Sydney won the last 5. Brisbane won their last 4. They met in round 19 this year, and Brisbane won it by 2 points in an absolute cracker up at the Gabba. It was a really exciting and interesting game, that one. We'll have a look quickly at who were the best players that day. Zorko had a lot of it, 29 touches. McCluggage, his name keeps popping up. Maybe he's a little smoky for Normie. He had 26 touches and 3 goals that day. McInerney, interestingly, was really good in the ruck. Cam Rayner was good, 20 touches, 2 goals. Joe Danaher, 16 touches, 3 goals. For Sydney, Goulden had plenty of it, 27 and a goal. Will Hayward, 17 touches, 2 goals. Isaac Heaney, 19 touches, 0 goals, 2. So it's going to be interesting based on that game, how this one plays out. Brisbane dominated inside 50s that day, +8. They had a lot more kicks. Sydney had a lot more handballs. Clearances +10 to Brisbane that day. +2 contested football for Brisbane, +2 uncontested football for Sydney. Marks +18 for Brisbane, interestingly enough. And yeah, that's about everything from that game. They also met in round 1 of this year, so we're going back a long time now. No, that's not round 1 this year. That's pre-season game, sorry. I was going to say they did not play in round 1 this year. They met in a pre-season game this year, which doesn't mean much. I don't know why that's on this screen. So they did just meet the once this year. And Brisbane won it up at the Gabba. Obviously, this is at the MCG. A lot different scenario. No other team has a home ground advantage. However, Brisbane did play at the MCG last week, and they obviously did win at the MCG last week, so a really big positive for them. They've actually had a pretty okay year, really, in grand scheme of things at the MCG, because they only just lost to Collingwood about 6 weeks ago, 5-6 weeks ago, however many weeks ago it was, in the final buzzer, really, after leading most of the game. and they won their previous game there. Sydney have also had a pretty good year at the MCG. They smacked Collingwood in round 1. They smacked Hawthorn in about round 5 or 6 with a really good win. But they did get beaten by Richmond, the Wooden Spooners, in round 3. So a little bit of a hit and miss season for them as well, in all honesty. So yeah, that's a look at some of the numbers. You can read through it all, but things that stand out for me in this one: tackle. Sydney bring the tackle pressure a lot more than Brisbane do. Contested football, Sydney dominate that a lot better than Brisbane do as well. But then the clearance game and the inside 50 differential game is both dominated by Brisbane typically. So going by that, you would expect Brisbane are going to create plenty of chances for themselves. Can they take them? Will be probably what ends up resulting in who wins this game, in my opinion. It will come down to whether Brisbane can take their opportunities or not, because I feel like they will get plenty of chances in this game. If they can convert those chances, they're going to go a long way to winning it. We've got another sheet of stats here. This is like quarter by quarter and score sources where they get their points from. As you can see, Brisbane are a dominant first quarter team, 22-4 plus 12.73 points. So I think Sydney will be coming in with a big focus on coming out in that first quarter and doing really well, because they struggle in first quarters and Brisbane are the best in the business at first quarters. The rest of the game, you think Sydney kind of get control of the game a bit. However, obviously the last 2 weeks, Brisbane have really turned it on in that second half, and especially that last quarter. So a little bit of a concern there, typically, but the last 2 weeks, Brisbane have turned that around. So it's going to be fascinating if this plays out the way that the numbers tell us it will. I mean, the game never turns out the way the numbers say it will, but if it did, it would be a fascinating game. If Brisbane get out by a few goals in that first quarter and then Sydney just peg them back throughout the rest and ends up close, it would be fascinating. As you can see down the bottom of the screen, there's some score sources where these two teams score and where they concede their scores. Things worth noting here is both teams pretty good at turnover, especially scoring from turnovers, especially Brisbane. Stoppages is Sydney's go-to, though. They dominate scoring from stoppages. They don't do great at stoppages, but when they do win the stoppage, when they win the clearances, they do score really well out of it. So you got to be careful with Sydney that you don't let them win too many clearances, because if they do, they will absolutely tear you apart. And then score sources on the ground. Both teams pretty good from forward half. Both teams, Sydney really good from defensive half. Centre bounce good from Sydney as well. Brisbane concede a little bit from centre bounce, so that's an area that they're really going to have to lock down on Sydney, I think, is that stoppages. Make sure that Sydney don't get clearances, and if they do, that they're not letting them score from those clearances. These are my tips now for the game. Big game. It's I've gone Sydney by 31 points. In all honesty, they've been the best team all year. Brisbane read like they're a pretty good team. I just don't think they've got it to beat Sydney here. Sydney have been the best team this year. In all honesty, I think they'll be too good here. I think their midfielders get forward, kick goals. So do some of Brisbane's, but I just don't see how they stop Heaney, Warner, and Gordon. Sorry, mind blank. From racking up 25 plus touches each and kicking a couple goals each. Chuck in the fact that no Oscar McInerney just allows Brodie Grundy even more reign than he had. I know Darcy Fort's coming in. He's got a big game, but in all honesty, he's probably going to struggle to keep up with Brodie Grundy all game. For Norm Smith, I've gone the obvious pick. It's a bit boring, but Heaney is their best player. He's the best player on the ground. Form-wise, this year he's been outstanding. He's been the best player on the ground there, 2 finals so far. So I'm going with him. If I had to take a smoky from, I guess, both teams, who would it be outside of the big 3 for Sydney? I don't know. Maybe Brodie Grundy could sneak it. With all honesty, he could end up with 25 plus touches if he kicks a couple goals. Who knows? I just don't think anyone outside of the top 3 for Sydney is going to do good enough to win a Norm Smith. In all honesty, maybe someone kicks 5, 6, 7, 8 goals. Very unlikely, but if they did, then maybe they would. But I don't really see anyone from Sydney. Whereas for Brisbane, I see a lot more opportunity for players to win. Obviously, McCluggage, he came up a lot in this preview. He obviously was their best player, in my opinion, last year. Ashcroft's been in good form. You can never rule out Lachie Neale. He's a great player. Dunkley's solid. They're going to have some people that can kick goals too. Joe Danaher, he's always an option for a big bag. Charlie Cameron could pop up and kick a few. Cam Rayner's been in some really good form as well, so there's plenty of options for Brisbane. If I was to pick one, I would probably go with... I'm going to go McCluggage. It's probably unlikely he's best on, or Brisbane's best 2 years in a row, but you never know. I'm going with him. First goal scorer, I've gone with Zach Bailey. I think Brisbane jump out the blocks. They'll kick a few early, but Sydney will peg them back and probably just stay within range for a big period of the game. And then at some point, you don't know when it will be, but it will be at some point, Sydney will just turn on the gas like they do week in, week out, and just kick 5 or 6 in a row in a short period of time and just put themselves in front and then hold on and win it. That's how I see this game. It should be a cracker, but we'll see what happens on Saturday. These are my tips from last week. We went 1-1. We tipped Geelong, so we got that one wrong. It was a close game, though, so we're pretty close with it. Sydney, they won by 36, so we weren't too far off the margin there. Our season's not going terribly great, but it's okay. We've gone, as I said just before, Sydney by 31 this week. That's pretty much everything we have for this episode. But before we go, before you leave, don't forget to check out the rest of the content. Tons of stuff on YouTube. As I said, there's a grand final preview episode on the channel already. There'll be another one that goes live Saturday morning at about 8 or 9 a.m. That's just going to give a quick rundown of anything that's come up over the last 24 hours before the game. So check that out as well. After the game on Sunday, there will be a review episode. We will rate every player of the ground. We'll go into the Premiership team, everything. Have a look at the grand final, start to finish. So come back, check all that out. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on this video as well. I thank you for watching. It's been another episode of All Aussie Rules podcast. This is 62. It's grand final week. 63 will be out on Monday, which we're looking at the AFLW. And then episode 64 will be back next Friday with the full wrap-up of grand final week and everything else. Football. I just realised there was one more thing I was going to talk about in this episode, so we'll quickly do that. Please tell me you haven't checked out already. If you have, I'm sorry. But Brownlow. Brownlow was this week. Paddy Cripps won his second. Congratulations to him. World record. Polling of 45 votes, which is unreal. Nick Dacos second with 38. Butters 29. I think Cripps was the worthy winner. I mean, I have a video that went out on the channel the day before the Brownlow that said Paddy Cripps was going to win the Brownlow. So don't get me wrong, I think he should have won. But I'm a little bit surprised by how much he did win by, in all honesty. Crazy that, how much he won by and how much he actually polled. So I had him on 35. So he went plus 10 on that, which, I mean, is feasible, but it's still a big margin, isn't it? We'll have a look at some of the other discrepancies from what I said. So the biggest people that overpolled, this first one is a bit harsher on my end, and the umpires got it more right than me, but Jesse Hogan went 12 more than I expected. It's mainly just because umpires don't typically notice forwards, but he polled okay, he got 15. Like, don't get me wrong, I think he was the best forward in the game this year, but I was just doing my Brownlow on who I thought the umpires would go with. Paddy Cripps, he polled 10 more than I expected. Matt Rao plus 9. Zach Butters plus 8. Andrew Brayshaw from Fremantle 7. Chad Warner plus 7. Treloar plus 7. Nick Dacos plus 6. Langford plus 6. Papley plus 6. Durham, Stewart and Callahan plus 5. Whole bunch of 4, 3, 2s and 1s. We won't worry about them too much because they're close enough to the mark. And then my worst ones, the opposite direction, the ones that I thought would poll pretty well but did not poll out well at all. The biggest name, Marcus Bontempelli. I don't know what he's done to the umpires this year, in all honesty, because how he only polls 19 votes this season is an absolute rort, in all honesty. Twice I had him as best on ground and he didn't poll a vote. And another time I had him best on ground and he only polled 1. So I just don't get how he only had 19. I had him down for 33. So he went minus 14. Zach Merritt, minus 10. For some reason the umpires didn't like him as well. I don't know why, because he gets a lot of it. He's very crucial in the game for Bombers, but apparently he gets treated differently than Paddy Cripps. Don't know why. Lockie Neal, I thought he had a better season than last year, but somehow doesn't poll votes as well as I expected. He went minus 8. Jack Sinclair from St Kilda, he went minus 7, surprisingly. Miller from Gold Coast, also minus 7, as did Myers. Umpires don't like him, apparently. Dangerfield went minus 7. I thought he was crucial in a couple games and only snuck a vote, or one vote in round 1 when I thought he was really good, and 2 votes in round 22. Hayden Young minus 7 as well. Pendlebury minus 7. Tom DeConey minus 7. George Hewitt minus 7. And then Bowies, Anderson, Cherry, Wines and Grundy all minus 6. So that's my Brownlow wrap up, I guess. Congrats to Cripps. Deserved the win, no doubt about it. I don't know if he had the greatest season of all time. In my opinion, he did not. But in the end, he won the Brownlow, and that's probably the right result. As I said, Nick Dacos second with 38. Zach Butters third with 29. Then Sarong and Heaney, who obviously couldn't win it, with 28. Tom Green had a really good year, 27. Treloar, 26. Matt Rao, 25. Goulden, 25. Jai Newcomb, 24. Chad Warner came out of the blocks like an absolute freight train. Ended the season with 23. Brayshaw, 22. Neil, 22. Warren Francis, Bontempelli, 19 each. Jordan Dawson, Luke Davies-Yanaki and Zach Merritt with 18. Then Jeremy Cameron, Rowan Marshall, Petrarca, who missed half the season, Sam Walsh, all with 16. And then Jesse Hogan, Nick Martin and Harry Sheasel with 15. And that wraps up the top 25 of the Brownlow this year. Paddy Cripps, no, not much more to say. Outstanding season. Wins it all. That is now the end of the episode 62 of the All Aussie Rules podcast. I thank you for tuning in. It's been an interesting episode, a bit up and down, but we got there in the end. Let me know in the comments below who you think will win the grand final this year, and chuck in your Norm Smith and your first goal kickers as well. This has been All Aussie Rules, episode 62. We'll be back on Monday with episode 63. Thanks for tuning in. Catch us then.